Welcome to another episode of the Touring Rabbit Holes podcast. Today, we have with us a special guest, my friend Brianna. Brianna, want to tell us about yourself and what you do in the world of social media?
My name is Brianna, and I'm a gluten-free food blogger, and I write cookbooks. So definitely not science stuff.
Okay, a whole lot of videos with you doing cool cooking. And actually, I think I may have gone out of order real quick because usually we do the host for whatever. It's fine. It's fine. You guys know me. I'm Gabriel Hesch. I'm the host of the Breaking Math podcast, as well as this show, our first YouTube show. And of course, we've got Dr. Alex Alanis. How you doing, Alex?
I'm the old guy. Hi, I'm doing well.
Yeah. This paper that I have both in front of me as well as on the computer is a pretty long one. It's about 47 pages, something like that. It gets into some really, really great detail. There's a lot of diagrams in here. This is pretty exciting. We get to, have those visuals available on this show for those who are watching the YouTube. For those who are listening to just the audio version, there's still enough great content in the audio that should be fine. If you want to see the visuals in the paper, you'll have links to the Google Drive that has the paper, both on the audio podcast notes as well as on the YouTube notes. Now, I brought my friend Brianna here. She's actually been helping me a lot with understanding video editing equipment and ideal lighting and all kinds of stuff, and I thought that was awesome. And I was telling her a little bit about the show, and we thought it would be interesting to have somebody who may not have the same technical background in order to help point out when things are not clear. You know what I mean? So hopefully this will bring some confidence to our audience who might feel that they're not ready for the technical aspects of this episode. So, yeah. You excited for this?
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I definitely, I don't know much about science, so.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. So, and also, I usually like to mention, so I have my master's in electrical engineering. I made a genetic algorithm for my master's degree project, and that is basically that's sort of a form of machine learning, right? Like I know there's different types of machine learning. I have a little bit of knowledge, but the entire world of machine learning, I have so much to learn about it. It's pretty a new field, in fact. So, this will be exciting. This episode, I would say, is targeted toward anybody who has an interest in machine learning itself, but also anybody who's interested in fake news, also social networks. Awesome. How exciting. Maybe some students who are looking for areas to research, or people who are wondering, what they want to specialize in, any of that stuff. There's a lot that I learned in my grad school program where I thought, boy, I wish I had access to this information earlier, because it may have inspired me for a research project. So I'm pretty excited about this paper. Now, this paper has an interesting name, and I actually tried to think of a catchier name. I'm not, meaning to tease you, but the name is on the technical side. I'll go ahead and read it. The name of the paper says, Early Doctrine for and a Path to Warfare by Artificial General Intelligence. Pretty interesting. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's just a doctrine for using. Now, when I hear this, the first thing I think of course, is Skynet, obviously. Which is kind of a little bit about what it's about. Now, if we open up the paper, if we do a quick perusal, you have an executive summary, and then you talk about sampling of modern battle spaces, and you even talk about lessons learned from Hollywood. I think that might be a good place to start, because I think with a mainstream audience, they might already be, familiar with Skynet, but also some other examples. So can you tell us about some of the movies that you talk about in this white paper and why you chose them?
Right. So especially a show called Person of Interest, which just got removed from Netflix in September, depicts the thought that I've been working on for roughly 20 years. And like I said, I began working at Cyber 2015 through, say, 2018. And now that's my capacity to build machine learning tools for different levels of warfare. I began thinking about this back then, and always looking for ways to explain it to people. So if you can get a hold of Person of Interest, you'll see when I say algebraic topology and graphical methods, especially the last season, season 5, is when you get to see it. There's another movie. Let me see what it's called. It's called The Aether. And it's a recent movie, and it in a movie form, it shows pretty much the same graphical understanding. If you have the paper, you can see a criminal and with the transparency of all sorts of networks in front of her, and she's going back in time and reassigning crimes for money to some sap while the rich guy is going to get off. So that's cybercrime, because they have an Internet of Things everywhere and data stream everywhere, so they can control their reality. And the other one was Eagle Eye. It's also very similar. It's 2000.
Actually, I'm on the page right now. I skipped ahead a little bit. I'll probably go back when, I'll go back to the executive summary. But right here, if I may, I'll go ahead and read a section out loud. We talk about it. And I don't know if the movie was called Aether. I think it was actually called Anon. Is that correct? A-N-O-N? Okay. So in the paper, it says, lessons learned from Hollywood's unreality. In the movie Anon, released in 2018, augmented reality is implemented into all citizens to vanquish deceit and crime at the price of privacy and anonymity. I said that word right. The people of Anon are ceaselessly bombarded by streams of visual data beamed to them from a universal database called the Aether, which also serves to record all augmented reality data produced by every person and everything with a camera. Now, we have augmented reality right now. Anybody who plays the game Pokemon Go, that uses augmented reality, where you've got, a picture of a park and, oh, look, a little Pokemon cartoon. So that's part of it. There's been a lot of talk about augmented reality with Google Glasses and the rumors I've heard for Apple and their next device. So augmented reality is certainly a thing. Now, in this movie, when little crime occurs, specially equipped police investigators get to the bottom of things by graphing out topologically related events recorded to the Aether. While ideal in principle, the Aether is hackable. In the image below, an expensive cybercriminal rearranges the time-ordered facts of a gruesome murder depicted as graphs that can be slid backwards or forward in time with alternative time-ordered facts. The history of topological related facts and their evolutionary topological dynamics can be gamed. Interesting. Very interesting. So, wow, yeah. So obviously this points out an over-reliance on a tool and the possible shortcomings of it.
So I was trying to think of a way to explain that, and you were looking at me looking for Miller Lite commercials, right? Because I was remembering back commercials when football teams would get into a fist fight at the end of the commercial over whether the beer tasted great or was less filling, and that they would devolve into a bar fight with that. Mm-hmm. So I imagine myself walking into an airport as a machine learner with awareness of everything, and I see N people, and I have gigantic entropy. If I can begin to say who are single travelers and who are parents of a kid or who are couples or who are families, I can compute something called the Flory entropy and begin to reduce the entropy or increase the information. And it may be, and this when I was back to being a nuclear weapons designer, it may be that a third of us are traveling to, say, the UK for a nuclear weapons conference with our ally over there. And how could I imagine splitting that group? And I imagine that, what if social media had been splitting this group of nuclear weapons designer into half of them being it tastes great and the other it's less filling, and for some reason and you're just pushing this the split with social media with Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, and suddenly they get into a discussion of it in the airport and there's an all-out brawl in the airport. That's what I mean by disruption. I mean, that's a silly example, but I think the Russians were able to get us to meet in Florida and other places in the 2016 election with fake stuff, and people would assemble.
That's utterly, wow. It's funny.
Now formalize that. Make it a doctrine. Have the spy agencies, have the mathematicians, and have the tools to actually formalize that against democracies or autocracies, etc., at whatever level you want.
Okay.
Best friends even.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, so I'm going to try to go ahead and paraphrase that briefly, if I may. And tell me if I got it right here. So obviously, all of us already know that we are part of a network. That's just our part of our existence as social creatures. For anybody, let's just say in small town America, a big part of your network might be your church, might be your school, might be your work or your sports team. Anybody who you associate with and you have to cooperate with for any given reason. And obviously, your family is a network as well. And with respect to social media, well, there's already the movie, The Social Network. I don't have to convince anybody that itself is a network, but your network, Facebook itself is massive, and you have the chance to be part of a massive, massive, massive network as opposed to a smaller network, which might be, as I said earlier, perhaps a small town church or any other smaller group that you belong with. Now, and when you were talking about deliberately using networks to spread information to incite things, you can have information like, let's just say, propaganda, fake news that is meant to incite, and you can control variables such as the type of news, and then have really moving news. I know for a fact that I'm not wording that correctly. Flashpoint news. I've read things myself that I reacted to, and then later I found out it was fake, and I recoiled with embarrassment when I realized it was fake. It was awful. And I'm not even going to tell you about the example that I used. The example I used was a news clip that was released from, I don't remember what news source it was. It wasn't a really well-known one, but it showed a guy who was sweeping. He was sweeping outside of a college dormitory, and and a cop was screaming at him with his gun drawn, and the guy was saying, "Don't shoot, don't shoot!" And immediately, I was filled with white hot rage at that cop. And then later, I thought, what's the deal? This is clear, unambiguous, this is a clear example of somebody scaring somebody else with a weapon. And this is a poor college kid who's already said he lives there. Well, when I watched the longer video, there was a lot more to the story, and the individual was in fact harassing the cop and pushing his buttons. And it's not that what the cop did was right, because it wasn't right. And in fact, I believe he was let go of the force. But when I saw that little clip, I became aware that I went from 0 to 60 in white hot rage. And if I had seen the entire video, I wouldn't have responded with as much rage. I wouldn't have approved of what the cop did. The cop should have let it go. But I wouldn't have responded the same way. And suddenly it made me actually terrified at the ability in this day and age with, 10-second sound bites and Twitter and things like that, the ability to have white hot news that will make you want to react. That's dangerous. That's very dangerous.
It's dangerous, but it's not new, except now we have real time and the internet. I think back in the Roman Empire days, Octavian printed fake coins or coins that were derogatory to not Julius Caesar, but to Mark Antony and his competitors. For fake news, the term was actually instantiated during the French Revolution. Yes. And since you're a parent of 2 young daughters,
I am.
What do you think about the fake news, and what do you do about it?
That's tricky. I was talking to Gabriel about this earlier. I actually get most of my news from Facebook. So I'm really one of the people who, it's really easy for me to get fake news because I'm not necessarily actively looking for news in other places. So I see what's in my news feed, and that's what I go off of. I don't know, having 2 kids and raising them, my kids are young enough that I try to mostly shelter them from news in general. Yeah. But yeah, it's seeing the effect of fake news and what it can do. It makes it kind of scary being a parent sometimes.
Okay, yeah, I definitely agree with that. Definitely makes it scary. And I think the way I been doing it. My daughter's older, but my son is just to show increase awareness of the percentage of fake news out there and show examples of it and sort of train.
Yeah.
And maybe teachers can do that. It's a whole new discipline, how to not be bitten by fake news.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard the term inoculation before. I have hope that it works, but to be inoculated by fake news. Following, the example I gave earlier, there's times where I will see headlines that I know will be jumping, and I actually don't look at that. I don't look at the headlines for a few reasons. It's not that it's not, a very good thing to be aware of things, but I know that maybe I'm not in a state where my response to it will be a helpful one for me or for society. So I think, news fasts, like how you fast from certain foods, that's certainly a good thing. And just remembering that, all of us as individuals have our individual roles to play, and knowing when to just unplug from things. I think a recent thing that happened was the presidential debate. I'm not referring to the vice presidential debate. I'm referring to before that. The recent presidential debate, actually, from the reviews I read, a lot of folks were really sick of it. They were disgusted by it. And I think that, I don't know if that was the intention of either party in the debate, but it made me want to completely unplug from the political news cycle completely for a very long time. And the only thing that I was interested in reading was the platform from individual politicians on their website. I don't want to see a mudslinging fight. But I'm not trying to go too far off task here, but in that example, there was a lot of folks who were really sick of all politics after that debate. My hope is that it made people more interested in reading and less on showy stuff.
I actually enjoyed it because it was just enjoyable to see how many voters the president was pushing away.
Yeah.
People were disgusted by him. Hopefully, women voters could see that, and that continued during the vice presidential campaign. Yeah. With the the man dominating the language of that debate. So I think that the Republicans should keep it up and keep going.
Oh, gosh. I see, of course. Yeah, as you can see, we do have political opinions on this show, which is
well, and some of them are not opinions. Some of the in the military we have an honor code. I will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those among us. I find I bring that up a lot because the current administration is not at all consistent with that.
Yes.
And yet a sizable fraction of the military is in support of the current administration. Moreover, we civilians and military, we sign oaths to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I don't find that consistent with the president who looks at our intelligence community and looks at Putin and goes, yeah, Putin. I'm going to go with his word. Yeah. That is an insult to the people who've dedicated themselves to the intelligence community. Yeah. And so I think it's a 40-60 ratio roughly. I think it's an artifact of the 538 Electoral College that we're in the situation that we are in. And I think it's a 60-40 ratio. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gone to the moon. We'd be Klingons, and we would have beaten each other and never developed calculus, and et cetera.
Yeah, interesting. Actually, can you clarify that a little bit? You talk about developing calculus. You also talk about human achievement in general. How does that deal with, you said, the 40-60 rule? I
think that 60% of us are altruistic and have a social contract, and 40% of us are sick. Okay.
Wow. I'm not. Who originally proposed that ratio? Is that a
Me.
curiosity? Oh.
And I mean, it's not 60-40 necessarily, yeah. But it is. If it was the other way around, I don't see us ever having developed civilization.
Interesting.
We'd still be clubbing each other.
Okay. Yeah. How fascinating. Okay. So that's an interesting topic, is when people can come together and create culture versus when they destroy it. That's a very there's the story of humanity all together. Now, this is a pretty thick paper, and I'm still in this first part of the paper here. We talk about movies. I did want to talk about a few other movies that are mentioned briefly, and then we'll go on to the rest of it. So this next part, I'll go ahead and read out loud as well. This says autonomous AGI warfare, or autonomous, the AGI acronym. What is that again? That's Artificial general intelligence. Okay, very good. What will be new in the eternal war to control reality will be the employment of increasingly autonomous artificial intelligence methods based on increasingly sophisticated evolutionary deep reinforcement learning technologies. I realize there's a lot of jargon there. We will get through it. Using topological dynamics methods. A great foreshadowing of such technologies was depicted in the 2008 movie Eagle Eye. In Eagle Eye, the Autonomous Reconnaissance Intelligence Integration Analyst Supercomputer, or ARIIA, leverages planetary data systems to prosecute an overarching national strategy to kill the President of the United States by his immediate successors by orchestrating key, graphically correlated humans to do its bidding at pain and death. Like the supercomputer HAL in Arthur C. Clarke's 2001 A Space Odyssey, ARIA, is that I said, ARIIA, is a fully autonomous AGI. The founding of early generation topological infrastructure to build a system such as ARIA is being rolled out in China right now. Can you talk about what's happening in China?
I don't have their buzzwords, but they definitely are beginning to put Internet of Things everywhere. And I think if I'll mispronounce it, apologies, the Uyghurs. There's cameras everywhere. There's concentration camps apparently we're picking up from satellites and social media. And even for just the general Chinese citizens, I think now you have to check in daily and do some party thing back to the Mao Red Book. So they're definitely trying to control their population with the Internet of Things and topologically connected to communism and that story. And topological is hard to explain, but it means how things are connected to each other, both in time and the rules by which things evolve and how they're associated to each other.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Now, I think it'd be worth talking about more of the characteristics of machine learning and fake news and social media here. You have a couple of graphs here. Now, if I were to go back a few pages, earlier I said that I was going to skip a few pages. We have I don't know if this is shortly after the executive summary. It says a sampling of modern cyber battle spaces, real world unreality, lessons learned from Hollywood. Well, this is actually the same sections, but you have this graph here, and in fact, we can pull that graph up on the screen, where it says real world tweets battle bots versus humans. Can you tell us?
This graphic is a snapshot of social media and a suspicion by machine detection of which dots correspond to humans and which dots correspond to bots that are doing this. This battle of SB 277, which is a 2015, I believe, proposal for California vaccination. It was a law back then, SB 277. And so here's the social media battle depicted there. Also, a little bit below there, and I'll project that up too, is a tool that everyone can use. It's called Hoaxy. And Hoaxy is pull it up, it's on your browser, and you punch in the news story that you're interested in, and it begins to populate in time and by popularity the story of some, say, like you were talking about your fake story of the college student and the policeman. Yes. It will actually begin to show when it first appeared and how popular it's gotten. And again, it will connect the dots. It will say, okay, these are probably bots and these are probably humans.
Fascinating.
So these are cool tools.
Yeah, I wonder what criteria it uses to establish this. I mean, I've heard of these before. I've also heard some criticism, obviously, that they're not always perfect. But I'm curious how something identifies a bot.
That's a science unto itself. So,
yeah.
But it would be the signatures of maybe humans can't tweet 30,000 times a minute.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe that's a clue.
Yeah. Very cool. Interesting. Oh, very very interesting.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say I feel like with bots sometimes I think they repeat certain phrases. Mm-hmm. I know on my website I have a plugin that will filter out spam comments. And I don't know exactly how it works, but I figured it was something like that.
Yeah, and that's just something personal. I've been thinking of the world this way since I can't remember when, but I actually try to the best of my, and it's imaginary. So I walk into an airport and I try to imagine the networks, and I try to imagine the ones and zeros and how they might be connected to other cities and other people and how I try to walk around as if I were in a Hollywood movie imagining everything, so I can try to bring the mathematical tools to do that. Mm-hmm. One of my heroes, it was Bruce Lee, who would walk around airports and he would imagine grandma attacking him or somebody else attacking him. And he was always ready to fight. And that's a good trick to have.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. There's been a big conversation that was actually started by a meme where someone was talking about how, a lot of guys do that. Like they'll just go around places and they'll imagine, if I was attacked, what would I do? Like identify your weapons. I'd use my backpack and swing it around, and like it's this desire to protect, which is just kind of hilarious. I have my nephews and I were cleaning up my attic, and we discovered my old Taekwondo kick pads, and I showed them, the basics, a couple of roundhouse, even some cool spinning crescent kicks and back spinning crescents. They've been obsessed with it. Now that's all they want for their birthdays now is kick pads, so they can all be wise in the ways of martial arts, because you never know when you might need that. So yeah, if those of you out there who are always trying to imagine scenarios where you'd save the day, you guys are certainly not alone. We all do that. So.
Well, sadly, it's something that it's part of our reality. Sadly, it's when I sit in the movie theater, I think about where I'm placed and with my kids and what I would do if someone came in there with a gun. Yeah. Sadly, I do think that way. And sadly, I'm always thinking about what would I do to stop that kind of violence. Yeah. So it's not just, maybe it was an old guy thing to do, but now it's reality. Yeah. Because you're not safe at a church or at a movie theater or at a mall or in a park or in Las Vegas listening to a concert. Yeah. That was 50 some odd people that were mowed down, I thought.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah, that's true. Good. Now, this paper gets into some thick, nitty-gritty details here. And again, I guess the first area that I'll go ahead and talk about, or I'd like us to talk about, is this headline here that says, that talks about the nature of social media battle spaces. It says forced fires and self-organized criticality. Can you tell us a little bit about what this means? And there's 2 quotes there as well. I'll read the quotes and then I'll hand it over to you. How's that? Okay, so the quote says, "The rules of fair play do not apply in love and war," by John Lilly, Euphrates, The Anatomy of Wit, and Euphrates and His England from 1578. Nor will rules of fair play apply to AGIs. You have one more quote here. "Countless minor incidents, the kind you can never really foresee, combine to lower the general level of performance and end by producing a kind of friction that is inconceivable unless one has experienced war." That's said by Carl. I'm sorry, who? Yes, correct. Yes. From Vom Creech, did I say it?
Everyone knows him as Clausewitz in the military.
Clausewitz. Okay, very good. All right, so tell us about this section.
That is inspired by the Arab Spring. And I guess in that part of the world, different countries would have dictatorships propped up either by the then Soviet Union or by us. And they were quite oppressive, like Iran, Shah of Iran, Egypt, etc. And these figureheads would made it miserable for the people, made them poor. And I eventually, and this happened in Tunisia, a man was just peddling trinkets, but that's the way he fed his children. And the police took away his stuff, and he got so enraged that I believe he went to the police station and burned himself alive. He died a few days later. And after decades of the region being pushed by these people, by these dictators, it triggered an avalanche, and dictatorships began to fall one after the other, from Tunisia to Egypt to Syria, which is still fighting. That's the kind, I was joking about the airport and the nuclear weapons designers brawling over, tastes great, less filling, but that's how you can weaponize against, dictatorships in that case and cause social change. So I have a whole bunch of historical examples of that. I have Boris Yeltsin and fax machines when there was a coup against them, and they rolled the tanks into Moscow, and the people were using fax machines to say, come and defend, the president. So it's happened in many places, and I cover that history, and that's a place where you look for doctrine. And yes, I do imagine the Department of Intelligence or in some country having lots and lots of people doing that. And I actually think that's going on right now in our election currently, and all around the world. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've heard about that as well. Now, I've heard that, in all kinds of countries, the world over, you have anybody who is in a position of influence, who has money, if they have a policy that might not be popular for a certain population, and then they're getting criticized on Twitter or on Facebook, they will release the bots, and then all of a sudden you'll have tons and tons and tons of comments comments that appear to be supporting this person or this policy, and it's supposed to sway public opinion. So that's I've definitely heard about that in Saudi Arabia and in elsewhere. So
I imagine building systems that can stop that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I know from I follow climatologist Catherine Hayhoe on Twitter, Dr. Catherine Hayhoe, and she is always putting out information related to the U.S. climate assessment as well as climate change in general. And she actually has recommended a few things to identify bots. And again, it uses the same methods that you talked about earlier, where it if an account puts out a ton of tweets very, very quickly, it might raise some flags. And I think there's other ways of doing it. It's not perfect, but it certainly helps to it's certainly a helpful tool.
So you're quite popular on the internet, from what I understand.
A little bit. I've been working in social media for at least 8 years.
Right.
I have managed social media accounts for several different companies over the years.
Are there things you know about to get popularity, or things that you've done accidentally that have cascaded away?
Let me see.
How volatile is the world of gluten-free?
It's important.
It is for me. Gluten-free cookie is important for me.
For a lot of people.
Are you attacked by pro-gluten, by the
You know
pro-gluten
what?
lobby?
There sometimes it feels like that.
Do you ever have a recipe go viral, like some really cute holiday treat that suddenly goes viral?
Yeah. So I've had some recipes go viral, and it's and then you get weird comments and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know the best way to get something to take off other than it just being timely, and people like it and they interact with it. But then certainly, I think when things pick up steam, you do get interaction from probably from some bots, and that just kind of
we've gotten bots on our podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that.
Did you see that? I don't know if you saw last week. We had somebody talking about STD tests and Viagra. Comment section. So I quickly deleted that.
Interesting.
Yeah, I get comments like that all the time, and tweets, and the worst was what was it? It was a video platform, and then Twitter bought it. I forget, that was a couple of years ago. Like the live streaming video, and that was the worst. People would hop on and tell you to take your shirt off and stuff like that. Okay. That was bad.
So what underlies that behavior is called a small world network. Mm-hmm. And small world networks follow something called power laws, and you can attack them with statistical physics. But they are the 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon problem. Okay. And that how connected we are. There are places like Google or CNN that are, if you look at them in a network sense, they have lots of paths to lots of things. We're much smaller. We have paths to families, a few friends. That kind of network, though, every once in a while, for inexplicable reasons, make some cat video take off around the planet. That's a self-organized criticality event where you have statistical behavior of one kind, say the stock market is plowing along, and all of a sudden you have sell, or buy, and something self-organizes at a meta level. And it's the networks that we've been building in the show up in hoaxy that permit this. So you have to study these networks to exploit them or to protect yourself from them. Anyways, that Gabriel, I thought was a way to just sort of summarize
totally.
all that, the small world criticality and small world networks, and self-organized criticality.
Okay. Now also, just to get into a little bit more of the technical details here, you did talk about forest fires. So what you just explained with a cat video that may suddenly go viral, which is a fascinating phenomenon. I even think about how that applies, like evolutionarily, like you have a trait that'll evolve and suddenly both in behavior and biology spread like crazy because it's so successful. But yeah, that's certainly a phenomenon of complex systems. The forest fire part, can you explain or unless you already did it?
It's a gridded system simulation of a forest fire. I think it's from statistical physics models of forests back in the 80s, or yeah, I think late 80s, in which case you have trees and how you have nearest neighbor rules for how close they can get to each other, and then you set off a fire at some random place and see how it goes, and how it comes back in time, and how nature tries to equilibrate to maximum growth but minimize potential for fires. And it applies well outside of forest to things we're talking about, cat videos, etc.
Interesting, fascinating. Okay, so again, there's a whole lot more to this paper here, but we'll keep going. And again, I think you may have already hit this. I'm just trying to get through this here. The next section says small world networks, low hanging. And I think you already.
That's the one I think we've covered that. So the next thing is the TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures for artificial general intelligence.
Okay, this is interesting. So yeah, that's a very important acronym. And again, there's a lot of pages here. I don't have the. Oh, you know what? I'm probably
the table of contents.
Sweet. Okay. So yeah, let's do that. Tell me what page it is, and then
it's 25.
Okay. Oh yeah, because we skipped. There's a lot of fun diagrams and stuff here. I spent a long time on this. Okay. So here we go. Page 25. Okay. This is the acronym that you just said. TTPs in the age of machine learning and a general path toward AGI. More fun quotes. Can I hand this off to you to read these quotes, and then we'll have Alex talk about what these tactics are?
Okay. I had played a lot of computers, but had never experienced anything like this. I could feel, I could smell a new kind of intelligence across the table, and that was Kasparov, the chess grandmaster after losing to IBM's Deep Blue in 1996. I feel like his DeepMind's Alphago game is more and more like the Go God. Really, it is brilliant. Sorry.
And that was Keji?
Keji, Go champion after losing.
Yeah. Speaking of networks, I like how we can talk about, an example of one thing and it applies across multiple podcast episodes. We did an episode on human intelligence versus artificial intelligence, and we talked at great length about IBM's supercomputer Watson winning at Jeopardy. We talked about the computer that learned how to play Go on its own, which is just scary. But then, of course, it applies to this as well. So I just think it's cool.
So yeah, and just to add something to that 2017 defeat of the Go champion, which people thought was another 20 years away because Go is considerably more complicated than chess. Google then trained a super AlphaGo, so to speak, that was 100 times better than the AlphaGo that beat the human. So it's just amazing how quickly that progresses. However, let me just pause that to the previous episode. That's intelligent behavior, not intelligence. A car that drives itself is behaving intelligently. It doesn't care about the universe. It's just a blinking cursor with respect to the universe. It's a rock. So we have to be careful that looks like it's intelligent, but it's not. It's behaving intelligently because it's following some kind of control system. Mm-hmm. And TTPs, that's just the military way, at least in the Air Force, of thinking of battles, right? Tactics, techniques, and procedures. It's that acronym.
Wow. So I guess this is fascinating. For somebody who doesn't really understand, artificial intelligence, it would seem scary when you have something intelligent behaving that does something better than humans. But then, as you said earlier, if it's just ones and zeros and it's only one, it's one specific domain. But a human, where our game is survival, there's a whole lot more to us. And even stuff that we're not consciously aware of, like our immune system acting and to fight off infections, like that's an intelligence as well. Like we've got subconscious things, and like we're still very, very impressive. And even these things that Google does, even if something is done very, very rapidly in one specific domain, it still doesn't compare to what humans do in the game of survival seen as a whole.
So one of the gaps, I think, between today's artificial intelligence and Hollywood's general artificial intelligence is that we're still at the level where we want to sell you cookies or something junk from different social media.
That's what I do.
Yeah. I didn't mean it that way.
No, I didn't mean it that way. You're fine.
But it suggests a movie to us, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes truth is so in front of us that we don't see it. how is it that we really see the world? We see it graphically. We do it implicitly. But if you were to describe a job that you had, you would talk about your boss, that's a graph, and your workers, and the clients, and the market, and you're really depicting connections which can be made explicit. And I think that's what Hollywood is doing, is making it explicit. And we need an intelligence that is not just taking sensor data from a car and keeping it going from A to B and knowing how to navigate or play a game, but we need an intelligence that sees the graphs and the rules of these graphs. Like, let's go back to the Los Alamos designers at the airport. It sees where they're going. It sees where other people are going. So it can do a predictor corrector. Oh, so this group of people is on this flight, they're going over there. They're going to talk to the atomic weapons people from the UK. And you can begin to play that game. But what does play the game mean? It means you need rules that declare victory, right?
Okay.
And so that's a science that does not yet exist, and it's a science that I am very fortunate to be in a position where I'm not just a crackpot at night doing this anymore, but now that it's sort of my responsibility, and I'm excited to be creating a whole new science of how does a machine extract the graphs and the rules of the graph, the utility functions.
Because I remember I read through part of the paper, and one of the things that I remember is you're talking about how artificial intelligence, or it's AGI, right?
Artificial general artificial.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, and please go ahead.
No worries. It learns information the same way like a baby does, right? Where a baby, if you're holding it, you talk to it, and over time it learns.
Implicitly, but it's really explicit. You're saying it begins to understand its room, right? It where the door is, and where the closet is, and where the bathroom is, and where the child's parents, where their bedroom is. It's implicit to us, but it's really explicit. We have graphs, and we have rules of different scales, driving a car in a highway versus walking in your house. But it's still a graphical representation that we carry around of the whole universe.
Because when, and so I'm just trying to make sure I understand what you were saying before about how everything's more connected maybe than, or rather like the artificial intelligence thinks of like how you can train it to beat someone at chess.
Right.
But it's kind of just doing one thing, and how we need to have a doctrine for helping them to interact more and do more things at once. Or did I miss it?
No, I think you're right. I think, and here's an example of what I mean by how to weaponize something. American football teams will usually follow a playbook for most of the game. If they are 3 minutes behind and 13 points to go, a whole new behavior takes place. It is throw out the rule book. Let's not waste time on huddling, and let's just throw and throw. And that, to me, that's a physicist indication of a phase transition. Liquid ice is very different. All the molecules of water are one mechanical object, one center of mass, and you move them all simultaneously. Liquid, there's a little bit discorrelation, and they're very different than a gas even. And the way they're signaled in physics is there's something called a response function, and its derivative is discontinuous, and you go, a phase transition. Can I create a utility function for American football that takes delta time, remaining in the game, and delta score, and have an expectation whose derivative goes to infinity at, we better just throw the Hail Marys. And the Japanese did that in World War II when they thought, okay, we're going to lose. And they changed the rules. They used kamikaze techniques where the pilots would kill themselves by diving into American shipping. And that's the kind of rules at that level that I'm looking for to control stock markets or control politics. Look for that kind of that's low hanging fruit. There can be more subtle things. Train people to be self thinkers. The complete opposite. To be aware and intelligent. Maybe that's the goal of a benevolent machine. Not necessarily always dark and Terminator like.
Oh, okay.
But just think about that now. Maybe now when you're with your daughters, you'll see the graphs. And you can actually go online to Wikipedia. There's called Wiki Galaxy. And it's like you're in a spaceship, and your star will be calculus, and it'll have little hairs, and it'll go to Newton, and then it might go to the UK, or it might go to the bubonic plague, and it's because that's what Newton had to leave London to go, and he built calculus. So we're really graphical. We never
we don't think about it.
And the tools have been built for 100 years at least.
Hey, I have a question here real quick. And I'm sorry, this might be a little bit unrelated to what you just said. I know that this paper that you have is filled with vast diagrams here. And there's one that I keep seeing pop up that talks about gene networks. Can you explain how this is related to gene networks?
So we have roughly 20,000 genes, or I think it's less than 30,000 genes. And in certain cases, a single gene is responsible for a disease, a single cell mutation, sickle cell anemia. But how do we measure genes for intelligence or your height? There are many genes involved. And now we have automated methods that can look at samples in a cell with spectroscopy and other methods and actually identify how the genes are cascaded in some very complicated nonlinear way. The diagram you have, I see gene 5 is telling gene 2 and 4 to do something. Gene 2 tells gene 8 to do something, which then comes back to tell gene 6 and back to gene 5. And exactly that. I'm going to rip off the biologists. I'm going to take their methods for genomics and apply it to us.
Okay, wow.
So like I said, these methods, this is a state-of-the-art method, but algebraic topology is about 100 years old, or some modern aspects 50, 70 years old, roughly.
Very good, very good. Nice. So we're on this podcast right now. We are right at 48 minutes.
So do you want to just let me control home, and we can split it up.
Yeah, and we'll show. Let's just do. I figured just for the sake of our audience and for energy, we'll do a quick preview of what is remaining in this paper, and then we will come back. And there's a lot of papers that relate to topology and machine learning, and we've got some special guests who we've made friends with that we may have on the show as well. But before we go, we've made it to page 26. Let's just take a look at what else we have in this paper, and to give you a nice little preview of what's to come. All right, I think are you at the table of contents, Alex? Awesome. Okay, so. Unless there's anything else you had to say. Hey, so
Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. I have a question for you. So, since your specialty is cooking and gluten-free stuff, can you make some gluten-free sugar cookies that are like inspired by Terminator and Skynet?
Well, yeah, that would be easy.
Awesome. Very good. I thought that would be cool. I would like that. That would be some
I can do that.
Sci-fi inspired cookies. Okay.
One of my friends, you can make anything with cookies.
Awesome.
So do you have good ideas or great ideas for Thanksgiving and Christmas? My wife is making gingerbread homes, which are always strange in my house.
Yeah. The holidays are big for us.
Do a holiday doctrine for topological maps of gingerbread houses.
I'm going to ask my wife to do that.
I love it.
Chaos. How about a batch of cookies inspired by chaos theory and fractals? Would that be good? Okay, sorry.
And that I guess that we can cover that next time. It's not in this paper.
Yeah. Okay. But really though, I am interested. So actually, we got through a good 2/3 of this paper. So can you talk a little bit about what we have not talked about yet?
So it's looking at how artificial intelligence has been applied to more realistic games, like the game of Risk, which is much more strategic. There's been limited success with that. And basically, it's just summarizing the work on machine learning towards doctrine and towards policies. New science, it's not in here, is I'm developing, again, I consider it a new science. How do you do test? In the military, we do developmental test and an operational test. An operational test is when they hand you what should be the final product, and you take it out to a war game, and say it's F-35s, and it's satellites and Navy ships, and it's a fake battle, but you're seeing how the system behaves. How are we going to do that when large chunks of it are autonomous? And so I have tests that I'm developing for, well, how sensitive are the machine learners to initial conditions if I just tweak it a little bit? And that's where complexity and chaos and nonlinearity comes from. Or how stable are it? And apply almost biological ideas of homeostasis to these things and develop these measures for autonomy.
You know what was interesting is when I was doing my master's degree, research in evolutionary algorithms, I came across one paper, and I wish I had it in front of me because I could talk more specifically about it. But this one paper was talking about what is the best course of action as things get more turbulent and chaotic. And I don't remember what the example was. I think it was something like, let's just say, an aircraft suddenly has engine failure, multiple engine failure, something, or crashes. It said if you've got a course of actions in front of you, what's the best option? And they used machine learning to determine, this was fascinating, that in certain instances, doing nothing is 100% your best option for the most likely outcome of I don't want to say success, but there are times where taking an action will more likely further endanger you. And I thought that was interesting.
The example I think that I was just talking to someone about is an Air France flight that went down and killed everyone. And they were in heavy weather, and the computers were telling them all sorts of conflicting information, and they were kept on trying to fix it. I'm a private pilot, literally a couple hundred hours in the Bug Smasher. Yeah. But the idea is you fly the basic instruments, yes. The pressure, altitude, the airspeed, and if they had just fallen back to that instead of over-reliance on information, they could have flown the plane. So let me finish with, we always say, I think, therefore I am, cogito ergo sum. That's completely wrong. It's I topologize over dynamics, therefore I am. And therefore I act and I be, and in a temporal sense. So just a thought, once machines become self-aware, then it's all bets are off because it's post-Darwinian evolution. I have no idea where they're going.
Yeah.
They will have their own motivations and their own thing.
Yeah. That's not always fun to think about. That's a scary thing. So awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Any last minute plugs? I know, we've got more episodes in the future about machine learning. We've got more guests. We've got all kinds of exciting stuff. Please give us your feedback, your comments. If you comment in this video, we'll answer them. Shoot us an email at Touring Rabbit Holes Podcast.
Please tell us where your website is or what it's called.
Oh, yeah. My website is flippindelicious.com.
Yes. Flippindelicious.
And it's a gluten-free is it baking or general cooking?
Just baking and general cooking.
Baking. Okay. And are you going to have a topological map of or doctrine for topological gingerbread houses?
Maybe. We'll see.
In the near future? Awesome. Okay. Thanks again for joining us. Stay tuned and shoot us an email or, we love to hear from you. So thank you so much.